G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and this is my creative journey, episode number 3. Crazy that we've gotten to 3 weeks. I feel like it's a small number, but in my head it feels like we've been here for so long, and I'm actually so happy that we've actually made it this far. I'm really excited today because I'm talking about a particular topic of starting my own business and the things that I did to get my business off the ground, and things that I think are very important when anyone is starting their own business or from the ground up, and I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people. So I'm really excited for this one today. I'm going to be talking about things like working for free and finding your own niche, but before I do that, I want to talk about what I've been up to this week. First off, I want to apologize if I sound a bit nasally today, because I have got hay fever again today. I feel like I get hay fever all the time, which has been really frustrating over the past year especially. I feel like in the era where you aren't allowed to walk outside and sneeze anymore without anyone turning around and having a look at you, it's very tough to get hay fever, especially any day that's a bit windy at all. I get the hay fever, so I really have to stay indoors, but I'm glad that I'm in here just inside today recording the podcast, so no one is outside staring at me. I've been doing a lot of work over the past week on the podcast. I've been working hard at it to make sure it gets up online, and I've been working at editing the podcast from last week, and in that process I feel like editing my own podcast is such a strange thing in a way, because I don't like having to hear it back, but it is on one hand a bad thing, but on the other hand a great thing as well, because it really shows me ways where I can improve and things that I'm doing right and doing wrong, and ways that I can get better. I think one of those things is the way that I'm speaking on the podcast is trying not to speak too fast. It's been a change in mindset for me to have to go about it and think about the way I speak and construct my sentences. I've been getting really awkward about having a lot of silences within the conversation, and I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. I've been having to go back and having to listen to a lot of other people speak and a lot of things, and watching a lot of TV, listening to a lot of other podcasts, and listening to other people speak just in general conversation, and hearing where those pauses are. For me, just listening back, I feel really awkward when there's a pause, but it doesn't always have to be that way. And I think it's almost a product of the whole YouTube era, where when people are speaking, it's just the end of sentences, start a new one straight away, because it's easy to make that cut between sentences, so there's no awkward pauses, and they're just handing you information after information. Whereas on a podcast, I've got to remember to take that step back, and it's okay to have pauses when I'm thinking about things or when I'm changing into the next thing to say. I think that's okay, and it's been that realization this week, been going through and editing the podcast, to think that, it's okay to just leave that in there. It's okay to leave a little bit of space in between when I'm talking about two different things, because in normal conversation that would happen anyway, but it's just instinct for me to edit it out, or to just, as I'm speaking, just to almost speed over those awkward pauses. So it's been one of the things this week in trying to really listen to the way that I am speaking and the way that I'm talking about the different things, and realizing that it's okay to be able to slow down and take a bit more time. And I think in that way, in taking time, I think it comes across a lot more coherent, and the things that I'm actually saying are going to be easily understood. I think one of the biggest things for me with the podcast was trying to not make it so perfect. And it's a hard thing to do for me. Anyone that knows me knows that I am slightly a perfectionist, and would really want the podcast to be the perfect thing. But it's tough, and I think it's a good thing that I've thrown myself into this longer format of conversation, I guess, in a way that it's almost impossible to have the whole half hour to 45 minutes to be all perfect. And there are going to be times in there where I say things that are just not going to make sense, And there's going to be awkward pauses in there. There's going to be breaks. There's going to be little bits that are just out of my control. And I think one of the realizations that I've come to, and I think something that I knew all along, was the way that I engage with podcasts, and I think it would be the way that most people engage with podcasts, is they're not actively sitting down and just listening to every word for word of the podcast. I think most of the time when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm either exercising, I'm at home editing, doing my own work, I'm at home just walking around the house with it on in the background. And most of the time, that is the way that most people would engage and would listen to the podcast, is just by having it in the background and having it as something that is not totally in the forefront of their mind, but they're still taking on bits of information as they go. Like, for instance, when I'm like driving the car, I'm still listening to the podcast, but it's not the most active thing, and I can be off in my own little thoughts as well. When if I do hear something in the podcast that then jolts my memory or makes me think about something else, I can go off, but it's still playing in the background. So that is something that, in a way, combats that fear of it not being perfect, is that it doesn't have to be perfect, because no one is expecting it to be perfect, but no one is also, you're realizing that it isn't perfect in a way, if you get me. So I think that has been one of the biggest realizations in the way that I'm going to start presenting this podcast, and try and slow down a little bit and try to take time to be able to reconstruct my own thoughts and be able to put them down. And that's okay to do that. So hopefully going forward, I think it only gets easier, as I said last week, but I'm always trying to learn on different things and things that I can improve on from the weeks before. Hopefully it only improves from here. One of the other things that happened through this week was I finally got my podcast onto Apple Podcasts. So if anyone is over there listening to the podcast, hello, and you're welcome to you and everyone over there. Up until this, it's only been on Spotify. It's now on Apple Podcasts and most other places, I think, now. I had a bit of trouble with the whole Apple Podcast. I'm a big anti-Apple person. Anyone who knows me would know that. I've always been an Android person, but I had to make my own iTunes account this week in order to get the podcast on iTunes and on Apple Podcasts. So I was rather annoyed with that. I didn't ever have an Apple account before, and it was almost as if everyone online, when I was researching it, how to put it on Apple Podcasts, everyone was like, just enter your Apple ID and just away you go. Whereas I was like, how do I create that? And then I tried to create it online. It wouldn't let me do it online. So of course I had to actually download the iTunes app onto the computer, which is so stupid because I'll never use it. But I had to download it in order to create the ID to get it on there. But anyway, it's on there now. I do have an ID. I'm on Apple. They've almost got me in, but that's all they're going to get from me. At this point, I won't be converting to an iPhone anytime soon. I'm glad that it's on Apple Podcasts, because I think there are a fair few people over on the Apple side, unfortunately for those people, but they're over there listening to that, and I'm glad to have them on board with the podcasts. A few other things that I've been, I suppose, thinking about through the week is it's Instagram. And it's one of the things that I do use a lot for business, and I do use a lot, I guess, in my everyday life as well. Is trying to differentiate that Instagram from my business and in my own personal life. And I've been very tough in trying to make that distinction. I don't really have a personal Instagram as such. So I have my business Instagram account, and then I have my other photography Instagram account. So I've got those two sort of working side by side. The older one would be the photography Instagram account. So I've had that one for a lot longer. And that's really the place where I started out in photography. I started posting all different sorts of photos on there and built that up. And then early last year, I started my business account, which I'm just posting like all my photos that I am actually taking in my business. So to try and promote the business a bit more on that side, because the other photography account's not really anything to do with the business side. And I'm just posting photos over there. But the problem that I do have, and I guess a lot of people, would have this in a way, is anyone who's trying to start a new business account is they're not seeing as much engagement on that business account, because there's not too many people on their personal account who are interested in the business or directly, wanting to be updated with that business side. And so I've been struggling because I'm trying to get more. I think one of my big goals for this year was to become more personal on my business Instagram account and on my Facebook and all that sort of stuff involved in my own business, to try and drive that personal touch home with the business and to get people interested. I think it's very important if I'm asking people to come and spend their money with me or to come and do anything with me and my business. I would want them to know a little bit about me. I'd want them to be able to make that decision and for it to be an informed decision and to know who they're actually getting themselves in with. So I am trying to put more of myself onto the business account, but I think that in turn, it's then hard to put myself completely on the personal account or my other photography account, because there's just so much overlap there that I feel like I'm just not sure what to post, particularly on Instagram stories. And I'm finding that what I'm trying to post on my photography account versus on the business account is basically the same stuff. Like if I'm trying to get people to know what I'm up to in my day-to-day, like besides making the distinction between if I'm like working with an actual client, then that'll go on the business account. If I'm out taking photos for my photography personal account, then it'll go on there. That's a clear distinction. But other things that I'm up to in my day-to-day, when I'm just at the computer, when I'm working, when I'm out, if I'm on a holiday or something like that, like where do I want to post that stuff? And I guess, I don't know, I really haven't come to much of a decision, because I'm feeling like I would like to try and swing all that over onto my business account, because up until now I haven't really posted much on the business account. I've really been reading and seeing a lot of other people who have business accounts for their own photography or any sort of thing. It really is I think one of the most important things in that business account is being able to let people into your own life, I guess, especially someone who runs their own business, and someone who is trying to create something of their own, and it's a very personal thing. I think being able to let people into that business from the outside, I think is really important, and letting them. It's not only letting them into the business, but letting them into your own life as well, because I think that overlaps a lot with the business, especially when you're working with someone so closely. Having those genuine relationships with people, I think it's so important to put that out there. So I've been thinking about trying to swing all of my normal Instagram stories that I would upload over onto my business account, because I really want people to be engaged with that and really get to know me a bit more for who I am as a person. I know I need to be a lot more personal on those stories as well. It's something that I've been trying to do, and I guess I sort of am doing in a way with this podcast, is being a lot more open and a lot more personal about my own life. And I'm hoping that it'll be easier to then be able to put things on my stories and be able to have those conversations and be able to put videos of myself on the stories of things that I'm up to on the day-to-day, and have people actually understand who I am. I think most of the businesses that I follow and look up to, I think the person or the people behind those businesses I've actually gotten to know really well because of the content that they're being able to post on their stories and the things they're being able to talk about. I feel like I actually know that person, even though I haven't actually met them in real life ever. And I feel like that is something that I would really like to get to in my own business this year and moving forward. And I think it would be just very beneficial in that way, and being able to share those genuine things. So that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. So you may see a little bit of a swing in the next couple of weeks to being able to post more content on my business account and really posting things over there that I'm more interested in and more things that I'm up to on the day-to-day. I'm finding it really hard to make that balance between the two. So I feel like it's either got to go all one way or the other. Obviously with some obvious exceptions, I think it's mostly going to go one way. So we will see how that goes over the next couple of weeks, and I will report back and see how I'm going with that, because I feel like that's something that I'm really trying to work on this year, is to be a lot more personal on my Instagram accounts. One of the other things that I've been up to a lot this week, and as I said last week, I've been finding it really tough to get back into the whole swing of business. And so I've been trying to just ease back in. I'm not trying to throw myself in the deep end, because I know that that's an easy way for me to just be overwhelmed and to not know what I'm really up to. So I've been doing a lot more reading this week. It's always something that I do enjoy being able to do, and it's always something that I have been doing, but I've been trying to pick that up a bit more. I slacked off a bit towards the end of last year with my reading, And so I'm really hoping to pick that back up this year. I was having a chat, not really a conversation. I was asked a question the other day about one of the things that I'm grateful for. And I think my answer was, I'm grateful that I'm able to read. And it's a bit of an odd one and a bit of a roundabout way of describing it, because I'm not grateful. It's not in order to say that I'm grateful that I am able to read, I guess, in saying that other people out there aren't able to read. I think it was just more saying that I think reading is one of those important things in my life where I've actually learnt so much from being able to read. I'm always someone who's trying to learn, as I said, and I think one of the most important ways in being able to learn is being able to read things, and read things from a lot of different sources as well. So being able to read for me has been a very big educational tool. I was someone who a few years back had never even read a whole book in their life. Went through all of high school almost without even opening a book at all. Even the ones that I had to read for school, I hated reading in high school. And I think that was mostly because I was forced into it in a way. Always the types of things that I had to read in English at school were just things that I was not interested in. They were just books that I don't know how anyone could be interested in. And it wasn't until after high school, until I really started to investigate reading on my own terms, that I really came across reading as an educational tool rather than just reading for enjoyment. I'm not saying that those two are mutually exclusive in any way, but I found that a lot of people were just reading as something to do in their spare time, as something to sort of take them out of reality. But for me, I like to read. I don't like to, I would rather read something for education than read something for yearly enjoyment. So being able to read books that enlarge my perspective on any different types of things, I think is really important. And it's been something that, as I said, I've only just come to in the past couple of years, but I've really been enjoying being able to read. It's still not something that I inherently enjoy. I don't enjoy the act of reading. I find it to be very stressful. I'm a very slow reader. I'm a terrible reader, really. I really do take forever to read, and that is one of the downsides. But I think there is an importance of reading over listening to, like an audiobook, for example. I have thought about audiobooks, but I think being able to read something is a better way to be able to digest the information. Because I do go so slow, it is really forcing me to really digest everything that I am reading. And I think that's a good thing. Even though if I do take a bit longer on a book, I feel like by the end of the book, I've actually understood something and actually got something out of it. At the moment, for anyone who's interested, I'm currently reading 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. It's an interesting read, I guess, so far. I think I'm up to chapter 5. It's been an interesting book, to say the least. It's sort of outside of the style that I've been enjoying over the past year. So most of the books I've been reading over the past few months anyway have been more sort of businessy books about how trying to grow my business and different aspects of ways I can improve in all areas of business. And this one sort of goes back to just everyday life, I guess, and just things that he believes that are able to improve everyday life. I've always been a big reader of self-development books. I think that's really where I started out in my reading, I guess, is those self-development books, and being able to move the needle forward in my own life was always something that I've been inspired to do. I was asked a couple of weeks ago why I read self-development books, and if it is because I'm after being able to develop and change my own life. And I think in a way, yes, it is. I think in a way that's where I came to the books. As cliche as they have been over the past couple of years, and they've been sort of that on the edge that no one really wants to talk about them, I feel like they're starting to come into more normalcy, and it's starting to become more acceptable to be able to read those different types of books, and I think books that do improve your overall perspective on life, I guess. So I really don't have any shame in reading those books, and I'm always trying to improve my life in any way that I can, and so I think being able to grab different perspectives off different people is always such an important thing to do, especially for me, especially for someone who is most of the time working on their own and working at home and not really having those big interactions with other people, and not being able to grab perspectives off people I work with or people who I have a contact with on day to day. So being able to able to read different things from different people is so important. Now, I did say that this book was interesting, and I think it is because I think he comes from a very unique background on a fair few of these things. Now, I'm not going to say a unique background because I wouldn't say it's unique. I think it's just one that's not very well publicized in these style of books. He comes from a very old-fashioned background in a lot of the things that he says, which I think in its way has its own benefits, and I'm always open to hearing those different kinds of things. I don't think we should close ourselves off to different people's perspectives. I think everyone has a unique perspective, regardless of if it's something that you agree with or not. I think it's important to be able to hear those perspectives, and in turn, being able to create your own perspectives, because you can only know that perspective is wrong if you've thought about it in great detail and had to think about why it's wrong and how come you believe a different way, because you have been able to come up with your own perspectives off other things as well. So although he does come at it from a very old-fashioned perspective, which sometimes is a bit on the edge and on the nose for where we are in society today, a lot of the things that he does say are inherently true because they are so old-fashioned and they've been tested over time in the way that people interact. I've actually read a few books over the past 6 months that have been written a long time ago, like over 50, 60 years ago, that older books in that sense. And I was always turned off by the fact of being able to read older books because they never really had up-to-date examples or information in them that was relevant now. But the more I read them, the more I realize how relevant they are in today's society, even though the examples that they might give and the things they might be talking about are so old-fashioned that I've never heard of them. The overarching perspective and the overall message of the whole book, I think, is a very important thing. And just because they're old-fashioned doesn't mean they're outdated in our own human perspective, because human nature hasn't changed that much over the course of time. So things that we've learnt in the past, we should be able to take that on board and then continue to go on further from there. I think that's really important, and being able to hear those things from the past. That's what I'm currently reading at the moment. Hopefully I'll be done that the next few weeks, fingers crossed. I don't know how long I'll take on this book. I've been trying to, as I said in the first episode, I think I said one of my goals for this year is to read 12 books for the year. So that gives me another week to finish this book, which I highly doubt I'm going to do. So hopefully I can drag that out early in next month, can finish that one, and maybe we'll move on to a bit of a smaller book next time, so I don't become too far behind in that schedule. Well, one last thing that I just wanted to talk about while we're on the basis of things that I've been up to this week is that I'm actually working at an event tomorrow, which is interesting. I'm very excited for that. I haven't actually worked at an event for about a month now, actually. I haven't actually had any work because it's just been the start of the year, as I said, and it's been a little bit of a close of business towards the end of last year, and that's sort of rolled over into this year. But I'm going back to working at an event tomorrow, and it's actually one of the first events that I've actually been to, and it's an outside open event. So I've worked with other events before, but they've been closed events who I know who will be there. So this is an open event. It's going to be very interesting to be able to go and photograph in a more journalistic style, I will say. It's going to be something that I don't know how planned it's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen there tomorrow, but overall I'm excited, and I think it's kind of a first for me in working in a new field where I haven't really had much experience, and it's always so nerve-wracking working in a new style that I've never worked in before, and I think I have to really fall back on and be comfortable with the skills that I have, and to know that it's going to be okay to sort of transfer those skills over. I think a fair few people are able to get stuck, I think, in just working in one particular style because it's what they've become comfortable with. And I think that's a big mistake, especially early on. I think that you have to be open to working in different areas. As I said last week, it's tough for anyone to know exactly what they would like to do moving forward, and having opportunities to work in different areas I think is really hard to turn those opportunities down. It is one of the things I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. One of the real things that I wanted to hit was being able to find a way to start in business. And I think it's so important early on to be able to diversify yourself as much as you can up to an extent, and be able to be able to take every opportunity that you can to have experience in different areas, because you don't really know that you don't enjoy something if you've never tried it before. And I've always been a big believer in that. I said last week that I really wanted to start moving forward in my wedding photography business. And one of the big things in that, I think, is just starting to narrow down my business into just wedding photography, and not trying to put too much out into the world that I'm in it for other different things, that I'm trying to work in other different areas, because I'm just trying to attract the energy that I'm trying to put out there in the world, I guess. But I think with this opportunity, it was one that I'd never really tried before, and something that I've always been interested in. So I thought I'd just go out and I'd be able to have a go at it. And I think the skills that I acquire through that will then in turn help me in my own business, but also open me up to a new avenue that then I can then go and work out on the side or something like that I'm not directly advertising, but it's still something that is still there in the background. So I know that was a bit of a longer intro into today's episode, but now I want to get to the actual thing that I wanted to talk about. I did have a lot happening through the last week, and a lot of things that I've been thinking about, so I just wanted to get those out of the way at the start. But now I want to move on to the actual title of the episode, and probably what you're all here to listen to is how to get started in your own business, and how I got started in my business, and the things that you should do. And I think one of the questions that I get asked a lot, and that I asked a lot at the start, was, should you work for free? And is there a way to bypass that and to just start making money from the start with the skills you do have? And so for me, I think that everyone should go through a stage of working for free. I think unless you're in a position where you don't have to, I think the opportunities are not going to just present themselves unless you're presenting yourself to someone else. I don't think working for free is a bad thing at the start. I think especially to be able to gain experience and to be able to gain yourself a portfolio that you would like to work in, I think anyone should work for free. If you're going to say that you're not going to work for free because your art or whatever it is worth something, then I think if you're not willing to just do that work for free, and you're not willing to do the work and put the effort in for free, then how can you expect someone to pay you for that work? I think I just think that's one of the biggest things that I see a lot of people do, is expecting people to pay them so much money up front. It's not necessarily bad in a way. I think sometimes it can be hard, for one, to be able to get work at the start without having any experience at all, and then trying to charge an exuberant amount of money for your work. I don't think anyone's going to be at all interested if you don't have anything to show for your work, that you've never done any work before. There are certain cases where you can work for friends and family, and they're happy to hand you a bit of money on the side to be able to gain experience, or you might have a family friend who needs something and they're happy to give you a bit of money at the start for something or for your work. But I think in most instances, unless you're going to put yourself out there and work for free, a lot of the time, not a lot of people are going to actually come to you for work, because there's nothing there that they can actually show for that work. Being able to work for free is just one of those things that is just one of those things you have to do in any sort of career where you're trying to start something on your own, especially in a creative career where you're trying to get something off the ground. As I said, you need to build that portfolio, and I think one of the best ways to do that is working for free. It's tough because I hear a lot of people asking me, how do you start to work for free, and who do you go to get that work for free? Because it's not just as easy as saying that here's the work, I'm happy to do this for free, because a lot of people aren't really open to that. Because if they're not after the work anyway, then they're not going to want it for free, because they don't really want it to start with. And this is one of the things that I've been thinking about, and starting to move into the wedding industry, is, should I work for free at the start? And I think probably I should, because I don't have any experience in that industry at all. I'm not going to expect anyone to come to me and hire me for any amount of money when I don't have any proof of concept, I guess, in a way. I don't have anything to show for the work that they're going to receive. And so you're not going to buy something unless you know what you're actually going to get in return. And in that way, it's so important to have that proof of concept, I guess. So having work for free, I'm not saying is the only way, but I'm saying that it's an easy way to get yourself some sort of portfolio. And I know it really changes from industry to industry. So there's a lot on the line in the wedding industry for hiring a photographer who has never done any work before and hiring them for free. It's that thing of, if I hire them for free and it turns out to be no good, then that's that whole thing you did down the drain. Like I'm not going to have any really good photos to remember that by. I'm not going to, like, even if the work is average, like if you're expecting a really high standard, then you're not going to hire someone to work for free. Obviously, you're not going to hire someone who's never done the work before. But if it is something that there are people out there who would happily have you work for free and would happily be able to take that risk on board. I don't think that someone should walk into such a high pressure situation without the right experience and without the right equipment for the task. I don't think that would be ethically okay. I'd never walk into someone's wedding and ask them if I could take photos if I had never taken a photo before and I just had an iPhone. I would never do that. And if that person was up for it, I probably would never, I would never be able to put myself out there. If I didn't have any sort of consolation of things that if there was something to go wrong, that I could then have something to back it up with. If I didn't have those things in place, I would never feel comfortable walking into that situation. But there's obviously other situations. Like when I first started this business, I was studying product photography, and one of the things that I would do on a regular basis was just to grab things around the house and just start taking photos of those things, because I felt that was such a great way to be able to gain experience in a way, but also to be able to practice my craft and be able to do that work for free. I obviously wasn't ever actually working for anyone, but it was still work for free. It was work and effort and time that I was putting into it. And then when I wanted to start working in portraiture and couples photography, I started to ask my friends if they were interested in having their photos taken, because I knew that would be an easy way to be able to gain experience in that industry and be able to gain my own portfolio without having too much risk on the line. There was no money on the line. There was no expectation on the line. This was a thing that if it all just went completely wrong, that I was able to just ask them out again and we'll just head back out again and go do it. Like it was something that I asked them to do, so there was no real expectation of how it really turned out. I think in a way that was the best way that I could really see about going forward with it. And in turn, I did a few things and I did a few photo shoots like that at the start and was able to use that in my own portfolio and on my website, which then led to other people being interested in my work and being interested in actually paying me my money for the work that I was then trying to do. I don't think that I would have been able to advertise myself in my heart of hearts as a photographer if I didn't have that experience or that portfolio. And so being able to work for free, I think, was just the only way that I could really see to try and get around that. In terms of who to really ask to work for free for, I found to be extremely interesting. There was a lot of, there was no one really asking me at the time. Like people had known that I was a photographer for a while and no one had really come to me and asked for work for free. I know a fair few friends or other people in the industry who are working in the creative industry who have had people just ask them if they can work for free straight off the mark. And I didn't really have that from the start, so I had to actually go out and ask people. And so I started with my friends who I knew who would be interested. Obviously, when I was taking couples photos, I needed friends who were in a relationship, so that was fairly easy because that narrowed it down to who I would ask. I think that sort of made it easy, but I think when it comes to this time around, who I would ask, because no one's coming to me to approach me and ask me to take photos of their wedding. And it's tough for me to then ask anyone because I don't know anyone who's planning on getting married So it's then has to be on my back to then be able to put myself out there. And I think that's one of the things that I am going to have to do this time around, is because I'm not going to have people to ask. So I'm going to have to throw it out there to a wider audience of not just my close friends and family, but throw it out there to anyone on my Instagram, on Facebook, to be like, is there anyone out there who knows anyone who's getting married, and are they after their photos for free? I don't think I could just throw an ad out there and say, I'm a wedding photographer now, here's how much I am an hour. If you're interested, email me, because I don't have any experience in that at all. I wouldn't have anything to advertise, I wouldn't have any images to advertise. So I'm okay throwing it out there and saying, I'm happy to come take photos of your wedding for free, and just put that out there and see if I get any interest. And I think that's one of the things that I am going to do moving forward. I think that's one of the positives about this podcast, is that these things are happening in real time. So you guys will be able to see how I'm adapting in my business and the information that I'm using going forward. I know I've already done this in the past, but I'm going to have to go and do it again in a different style of industry, in a different area of the industry, and trying to see if I get any work out of that, and to see where I can get to moving forward. Because I think one of the big things about anything is to be able to build that portfolio. I think for me, when I talk about whether you should work for free, it's one of the big privileges that I have as an artist, is being able to work for free. And it's not just at the start of my career. I think as I go forward, I would really hope to be still in a position financially to be able to work for free wherever. Because being able to do free work for the people who are closest to me, I think, is just one of those really big privileges that I have as an artist, to be able to give that back to people who have always been there for me. I just did some work for free last week, actually, for a friend of mine who just asked me if I could do some work. And I was like, yeah, of course, because I'm happy to do that work. It was half hour. I don't really mind. I'm there anyway. We're going to hang out. I'm happy to do a little bit of this. I hear it a lot online that if someone was your real friend, they would pay for your work. And while I think that is true, that yes, they probably should pay for the work, I have no doubts that they probably would pay for the work, but I'm offering to be able to do that for free. And I think being able to offer that work for free to anyone who has ever been there for me in any sort of way is just such a big thing that I'm able to do. And I always feel so grateful to be able to give that sort of thing to my friends. I may not always be able to give my friends and family the best gifts on their birthday or whatever the case may be, but I know that I can be there to take a good photo of them, and I know that that's something that I can do all the time. And I hope that that's something that I'm able to continue to do. And it's not just, I don't think it's ever just working for free. I think it's also, as I said, building portfolio, but sometimes in the work and business, I start to have some slower periods, I guess. And so being able to do that work for free, or do work for other people who I would really like to work for, or do work for friends and family, and do work for free, and do work for people who I would love to work for, I think helps me to be able to keep up my skills and keep up practicing those skills. And I think it sort of gets me back in the swing of things in a way. I think that one of the most beneficial things sometimes of when I'm in a bit of a hole in my own business, and you're not having as much amount of work to be able to do, is that being able to work for someone and being able to ask someone, oh, hey, did you want to go have your photo taken this afternoon? I'm after a bit of work. I just would like to be able to work on some things. There's some new things I want to try out. Do you want to come have your photo taken? I think that's so important in being able to build in my own business, be able to build in my own craft, and be able to see myself improve. Because if I'm only taking photos every year now and again for other people, it's really hard to experiment on those new things. It's hard to implement, hard to keep up with the skills, be able to keep up in all the little bits and pieces. Any excuse to be able to do the things that you enjoy, I think, is just a great thing. And I think that's one of the episodes of not seeing this as exactly work, but seeing it as more the thing that I enjoy, and seeing it as the thing that I love to be able to do day in, day out. And so working for free on some things isn't always a bad thing. I think the idea of free work does have a big stigma around it, but I just don't think that those people can see how much work that free work can then provide them. I think that if you do free work for the right people who hopefully will then advertise you on your behalf, like most of the work that I've done for free has then led to other work, has led to him referring me on to other people and all of their friends and family. And if it's not them, it's all the images that I've taken that I've posted on my social media that people have been like, oh wow, that's amazing. I'd love to have that. And then I can start charging for the work. And then I can charge other people for things. And I don't feel as bad, because it's not that I feel bad charging my friends. It's that I would feel bad charging people for work that I had never done before, and for work that I don't really know if I'm able to do. And so when someone can come to me and say, I really enjoyed what you did with that person, or I really enjoyed that piece of work, I'd love to get something along those lines. I think that's just a real honor for me. And then I become a bit more comfortable with like being like, okay, I can actually charge for this now. And I feel like that is something that I'm going to try to do moving forward. And I will, of course, keep you guys updated in this whole wedding photography space. And you might see a few things. If you're on my Instagram, you may see me. One thing that you may see over there in the next couple of weeks is me really trying to get the word out to as many people as possible, and trying to see if there's any work that I can start with, and hopefully it builds up from there. With that being said, guys, that is probably where I'm going to leave today's episode. I hope you did really get something out of this and get, as I said, a perspective that you didn't have before. I think if anything, it's so important to be able to gain experience and perspectives of other people. And I've always enjoyed that, being able to listen to anyone who has anything to say about anything. I think that's so important to listen to them and hear what they're up to. If you are just here to hear how I am this week, I'm good. And hopefully you have learnt a bit more about me through this episode. And I will be back again next week. I think I have another very interesting thing to talk about next week, and hopefully you guys will be here for that, hoping to keep moving forward with these episodes. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying this so far. It's been a very interesting experience thus far, but I have been enjoying it nonetheless. So I am looking forward to next week's episode and being able to talk about a few different things that hopefully you guys will be just as interested in. So again, thank you so much, guys, for listening today, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye.